The first bullet tore through the window of Olivia Turner's boarding house room, just as she was stuffing her mother's pearl necklace into a tin box. And she knew in that instant that everything she owned would have to disappear into the earth if she wanted to survive the night. It was August 1878 in Dodge City, Kansas, and the heat hung thick and oppressive even as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Olivia's hands trembled as she gathered the few precious items scattered across her narrow bed. The pearls that had belonged to her mother, a silver locket containing a photograph of her parents, the deed to her family's land back in Missouri, and the $300 she had saved from 2 years of working at the general store. Her father's pocket watch gleamed in the fading light as she wrapped it carefully in a handkerchief before adding it to the collection. These were all that remained of the life she had known before disease had taken her parents within weeks of each other, before her uncle had tried to force her into marriage with a man 3 times her age, before she had fled west with nothing but hope and determination. Another shot rang out, this time closer. Olivia could hear shouting in the street below, the unmistakable voice of Dutch Malone and his gang. They had been terrorizing Dodge City for weeks, robbing businesses and threatening anyone who stood in their way. But tonight was different. Tonight they were after her, and she knew exactly why. 3 days ago, she had witnessed Dutch and his men robbing the bank. She had been walking home late from the store when she saw them emerge from the building, bags heavy with stolen money. Dutch had locked eyes with her across the dusty street, and in that moment, she had sealed her fate. She had run straight to the sheriff, but everyone in town knew that Sheriff Collins was old and ineffective, more interested in keeping the peace than actually enforcing the law. He had taken her statement with a tired sigh, and Olivia had known then that she was on her own. She grabbed the tin box and a small shovel from the corner of her room. The boarding house was 2 stories, but there was a trellis outside her window that led down to the small garden behind the building. Her heart pounded as she climbed out, the tin box secured under one arm, the shovel gripped tightly in her other hand. The wood of the trellis creaked under her weight, and she held her breath, certain that any moment someone would spot her. The garden was overgrown and neglected, full of shadows in the gathering dusk. Olivia dropped to her knees near a large cottonwood tree at the far edge of the property and began to dig. The ground was hard and dry from weeks without rain, and her arms ached with the effort. Sweat dripped down her face, mixing with tears of frustration and fear. She could still hear shouting from the front of the building, the sound of boots on wooden stairs. Finally, the hole was deep enough. She placed the tin box inside and covered it quickly, patting down the earth and scattering dead leaves over the disturbed soil. She tried to memorize exactly where it was, 3 feet from the tree trunk, on the side facing the back fence, near a rock that jutted up from the ground like a crooked tooth. "There you are, Miss Turner." The voice behind her made her blood run cold. She spun around to find Dutch Malone himself standing at the edge of the garden, his gun drawn and a cruel smile on his weathered face. He was a tall man, all angles and meanness, with eyes like chips of ice. "You should have minded your own business," he said, taking a step toward her. "Now you have made things very difficult for yourself." Olivia scrambled backward, her hand closing around the shovel. "The whole town knows what you did," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Killing me would not solve anything." Dutch laughed, a sound without humor. "The whole town suspects, maybe, but you are the only one who saw. Once you are gone, there is no witness, no problem." He raised his gun, and Olivia knew she had seconds to live. She hefted the shovel like a weapon, knowing it was useless but unable to simply wait for death. Just as Dutch's finger tightened on the trigger, a shot rang out from somewhere beyond the garden and Dutch jerked to the side, cursing. His own shot went wide, burying itself in the tree trunk behind Olivia. "Get out of here," a man's voice shouted. "Run!" Olivia did not need to be told twice. She dropped the shovel and ran, her skirts hampering her movement as she crashed through the overgrown garden toward the back fence. Behind her, she could hear more shots, men shouting, the sound of a scuffle. She hauled herself over the fence, tearing her dress and scraping her palms bloody, and found herself in the alley behind the boarding house. She ran without thinking, her only goal to put distance between herself and Dutch Malone. The streets of Dodge City blurred past her as she fled, taking random turns, ducking through gaps between buildings. She could hear pursuit behind her, heavy footsteps and angry voices. Her lungs burned and her legs felt like lead, but she kept running. Finally, when she thought she could not take another step, she ducked into a stable at the edge of town. The building was dark and smelled of hay and horses. She collapsed behind a stack of feed bags, gasping for breath, trying to be silent even as her body screamed for air. Minutes passed. The voices grew louder, then faded. She waited, trembling as the night deepened around her. Eventually, exhaustion overtook fear and she dozed fitfully, jerking awake at every sound. When dawn came, pale and hot, Olivia carefully emerged from her hiding place. Her dress was torn and filthy, her hair had come loose from its pins, and her hands were caked with dried blood and dirt. She had no idea if Dutch and his men were still looking for her, but she knew she could not stay in Dodge City. Not anymore, but she also could not leave without her things. Everything she owned in the world was buried in that garden, and without money or the deed to her land, she would have nothing. She would have to go back. The thought filled her with dread, but there was no alternative. She waited until the town began to stir, until there were enough people on the streets that she might blend in, and then she made her way cautiously back toward the boarding house. The building looked quiet in the morning light. There was no sign of Dutch or his gang, but Olivia approached carefully, keeping to the shadows. The front door hung open, broken off its hinges. Her stomach sank. They had torn the place apart looking for her. She crept around to the back of the building, to the garden where she had buried her tin box. The cottonwood tree stood unchanged, but her heart stopped when she saw the disturbed earth around it. Someone had been digging. Multiple holes pockmarked the ground around the tree, but none of them were in quite the right place. They had been searching, but they had not found it. Not yet. Olivia dropped to her knees by the rock, the landmark she had used, and began to claw at the earth with her bare hands. She had only dug a few inches when she heard the unmistakable sound of a gun being cocked behind her. "Stand up slowly, miss. Hands where I can see them." This voice was different from Dutch's. Younger, with a trace of concern beneath the authority. Olivia raised her hands and stood, turning slowly to face whoever had caught her. The man before her was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing the dusty clothes of a working cowboy. Worn denim pants, a faded blue shirt, and a hat pulled low over his eyes. He held a rifle pointed at the ground near her feet, not directly at her, but ready. His face was sun-bronzed and handsome in a rugged way, with strong features and eyes the color of whiskey. A star gleamed on his chest, catching the morning light. "Deputy," Olivia said, her voice hoarse with relief and exhaustion. "Thank God." The man studied her, taking in her torn dress and disheveled appearance. "You are the one they have been looking for," he said. It was not a question. "The witness from the bank robbery?" "Yes," Olivia admitted. "Dutch Malone and his gang, they came after me last night. They tried to kill me. I barely escaped." The deputy lowered his rifle slightly. "My name is Pierce Owens," he said. I rode in last night from Hayes City. The marshal there sent me when he heard about the robbery. I got here just in time to see Malone and his men tearing apart the boarding house. His jaw tightened. I ran them off, but they will be back. They know you saw them. I need to dig up my things and leave town, Olivia said quickly. Everything I own is buried right here. I hid it last night before they could find me. Please, I just need a few minutes. Pierce looked at the disturbed earth around the tree, then back at Olivia. Something in his expression softened. They already tried digging it up, he observed. Must not have found it, or they would have stopped looking. I buried it carefully, Olivia said. Please, Deputy Owens, I need to get it and go. If they catch me, if they catch you, they will kill you, Pierce finished bluntly. And leaving town alone is not much better. A woman traveling by herself would be easy prey for any number of dangers out there. He sighed and leaned his rifle against the fence. Show me where it is. I will help you dig it up, and then we need to figure out a plan that does not end with you dead in a ditch somewhere. Relief flooded through Olivia so intensely she nearly collapsed. Thank you, she whispered. She knelt again by the rock and began to dig, this time with Pierce helping. His hands were large and strong, calloused from years of hard work, and he made quick progress through the packed earth. Within minutes, his fingers hit the metal of the tin box. This is it, he asked, pulling it free and handing it to her. Olivia clutched the box to her chest, tears of relief streaming down her face. Yes, everything I have left of my family, everything I have worked for. Thank you. Pierce stood and brushed the dirt from his hands. We should not stay here. If Malone's men come back and find us, we will be sitting ducks. Do you have somewhere safe you can go? No, Olivia admitted. I came to Dodge City because I thought it would be safer than Missouri. I have no other family, no friends here. Pierce was quiet for a moment, thinking. There is an old line shack about 5 miles north of town, he said finally. It belongs to the Rockingham Ranch, but they do not use it this time of year. We can hole up there while I figure out how to bring Malone and his gang to justice. Once they are behind bars, you will be safe to come back to town, or go wherever you want. Olivia repeated, looking up at him with surprise. You are a witness to a federal crime, Miss Turner. It is my job to protect you. Pierce's voice was firm, but there was something else in his eyes, something warmer than mere duty. Besides, I cannot in good conscience leave you to fend for yourself, not with dangerous men hunting you. Olivia wanted to argue, to insist she could take care of herself, but the truth was she was terrified and exhausted and desperately grateful for his help. What about supplies? She asked. I have no food, no water, no blankets. I have some supplies on my horse, Pierce said. And I can sneak back into town tonight for more. Right now, we just need to get you somewhere safe. They left the garden through the back alley, moving quickly and quietly. Pierce's horse, a sturdy bay gelding, was tied behind a nearby building. He helped Olivia mount, then swung up behind her, his arms coming around her to hold the reins. She could feel the solid warmth of him at her back, the steady beat of his heart, and for the first time in hours, she felt something other than fear. They rode north out of Dodge City, keeping off the main road and sticking to the brush and ravines where they would be less visible. The sun climbed higher, turning the prairie into a furnace. Sweat soaked through Olivia's already ruined dress, and her head began to pound from dehydration and lack of sleep. She swayed in the saddle and Pierce's arm tightened around her waist. Hold on, he said quietly. We are almost there. The line shack appeared like a mirage in the distance, a small wooden structure perched on a low rise. It was weathered and plain, but to Olivia it looked like salvation. Pierce reined in the horse and helped her down, steadying her when her legs nearly gave out. Inside, the shack was sparse but clean. There was a narrow cot against one wall, a small table with two rickety chairs and a pot-bellied stove in the corner. Pierce helped Olivia to the cot and handed her his canteen. "Drink slowly," he instructed. "Not too much at once." The water was warm and tasted of metal, but it was the most wonderful thing Olivia had ever experienced. She forced herself to drink in small sips, even though she wanted to gulp it down. When she finally handed the canteen back, Pierce was watching her with an expression that made something flutter in her chest. "Get some rest," he said. "I will keep watch. You are safe here." Olivia wanted to protest, to insist she could help keep watch, but her body had other ideas. The moment she lay back on the cot, exhaustion claimed her, and she fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. When she woke, the light had changed. Long shadows stretched across the floor, and the heat had begun to fade. Pierce sat at the table, cleaning his rifle, his hat pushed back on his head. He looked up when he heard her stir. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Better," Olivia said, sitting up slowly. Her body ached and she was filthy, but the rest had helped. "How long was I asleep?" "Most of the day. It is nearly sunset." Pierce set down the rifle and stood. "There is some jerky and hardtack in my saddlebags if you are hungry. Not much, but it will keep you going." Olivia's stomach growled at the mention of food. She could not remember the last time she had eaten. Pierce brought over his saddlebags and laid out the meager supplies. Strips of dried beef, hard crackers, and a small sack of coffee beans. They ate in silence, the awkwardness of their situation settling between them. Here they were, two strangers, hiding together in a lined shack because a gang of outlaws wanted her dead. It seemed surreal. "Tell me about yourself," Pierce said finally, breaking the silence. "You said you came here from Missouri." Olivia hesitated, then began to talk. She told him about her parents, about the farm they had owned, about the fever that had taken them. She told him about her uncle's attempt to marry her off, about her flight west in search of a new life. The words poured out of her, a dam breaking, and Pierce listened without interruption, his eyes never leaving her face. "I thought I could build something here," she said quietly. "I thought I could start over, but now it seems like running away is all I know how to do." "You are not running away," Pierce said firmly. "You are surviving. There is a difference." "What about you?" Olivia asked. "How did you become a deputy?" Pierce leaned back in his chair, his gaze drifting to the window and the darkening prairie beyond. "I grew up on a ranch in Texas," he said. "My father raised cattle, and I always thought I would do the same. But when I was 20, rustlers hit our spread. They killed my father and burned our house to the ground. My mother died from grief a few months later. I had nothing left, so I joined up with the Texas Rangers. Spent 5 years tracking down men like the ones who destroyed my family. Eventually made my way up to Kansas, took a job as a deputy in Hays City." "I am sorry," Olivia said softly. "About your family." Pierce met her eyes and she saw a pain there that matched her own. "We all carry our losses," he said. "The question is what we do with them. Let them break us or let them make us stronger." "Which did you choose?" Olivia asked. "I am still deciding," Pierce admitted with a small smile that did not quite reach his eyes. Night fell fully, and Pierce lit a small fire in the stove to heat water for coffee. The shack grew cozy despite its humble state, and Olivia found herself relaxing for the first time since the previous evening. She watched Pierce move around the small space with efficient grace, his presence both comforting and unsettling in ways she did not quite understand. "I need to go back to town tonight," Pierce said as they shared the bitter coffee. "I need to gather information on Malone's whereabouts and get more supplies. Will you be all right here alone for a few hours?" Fear spiked through Olivia, but she forced it down. "I will be fine," she said, trying to sound braver than she felt. "They do not know about this place, do they?" No one knows we are here, Pierce assured her. Keep the door barred and the lamp off. Do not answer if anyone knocks unless you hear me give the signal. He demonstrated a pattern of 3 knocks, then 2, then 1. If anyone else shows up, there is a back window you can slip through. Take my horse and ride east. There is a homestead about 3 miles that way, a family named Cooper. Tell them I sent you. Olivia nodded, committing the instructions to memory. Pierce gathered his rifle and hat, pausing at the door to look back at her. I will be back before dawn, he promised. Stay safe, Olivia. It was the first time he had used her given name, and the sound of it on his lips sent warmth spreading through her chest. Be careful, she said. Then he was gone, and she was alone in the darkness. The hours that followed were among the longest of Olivia's life. Every sound outside the shack made her heart race. The wind picked up, rattling the walls and making her jump. She sat on the cot with the tin box in her lap, holding it like a talisman against the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. To distract herself, she opened the box and carefully examined its contents. The pearls gleamed softly in the dim light from the stove. She fastened them around her neck, feeling the weight of them, the connection to her mother. The locket came next, and she opened it to study the faded photograph inside. Her parents looked so young, so happy. Had they ever imagined their daughter would end up like this, hiding in a lined shack with outlaws hunting her? She picked up the deed to the farm, unfolding the brittle paper carefully. The land was still hers, technically, though her uncle had taken possession when she fled. Would she ever be able to go back and reclaim it? Did she even want to? That life seemed so far away now, like something from another person's story. The pocket watch was the last item. She opened the case and watched the hands tick steadily forward, marking the passage of time. Her father had been so proud of this watch, had worn it every day. She could still remember him checking it whenever she asked how much longer until supper, until bedtime, until Christmas morning. The memory brought tears to her eyes. She must have dozed because the sound of knocking jerked her awake. Her heart hammered as she tried to remember the pattern. 3 knocks, then 2, then 1. The knocks came again in exactly that pattern. It is Pierce, came his voice through the door, quiet but clear. Let me in. Olivia rushed to unbolt the door, pulling it open to find Pierce standing there with a canvas sack slung over his shoulder. He looked tired but unharmed, and she realized with a start just how worried she had been. Any trouble? She asked as he came inside and dropped the sack on the table. Nothing I could not handle, Pierce said. I managed to get supplies without being seen. Food, blankets, ammunition. He paused, pulling something else from his coat. And this? It was a dress, simple and practical, made of dark blue cotton. Olivia stared at it in surprise. I figured you could use a change of clothes, Pierce said, looking slightly embarrassed. Your dress is pretty torn up. This belonged to the shopkeeper's daughter, but she moved east last year. He was willing to part with it. Tears pricked Olivia's eyes at the thoughtfulness of the gesture. Thank you, she managed. That is very kind. There is a creek about 50 yards east of here, Pierce said, turning to busy himself with unpacking the supplies. If you want to wash up and change, now would be a good time. I will stay here and keep watch. Olivia took the dress and slipped out into the night. The creek was right where Pierce had said, a thin ribbon of water reflecting the starlight. She stripped off her ruined clothing and washed as best she could in the cold water, scrubbing away the dirt and blood and fear. The new dress fit reasonably well, and she felt almost human again as she made her way back to the shack. Pierce had laid out the supplies on the table: flour, coffee, bacon, beans, canned peaches. There were also 2 thick blankets, a box of ammunition for his rifle, and a bundle of candles. What did you learn about Malone? Olivia asked, Pierce's expression darkened. He is still in town, him and his whole gang, 6 men in total. They have been asking around about you, offering a reward for information on your whereabouts. Sheriff Collins is doing nothing as usual. The man is worse than useless. So what do we do? Olivia asked, fear creeping back in. I sent a telegram to the marshal in Hayes City, Pierce said. Told him about the situation, requested backup. Should take them a few days to get here. Once they arrive, we will have enough men to arrest Malone and his gang properly. He looked at her seriously. Until then, we wait here. Stay hidden. Stay safe. A few days, Olivia repeated. The thought of spending days alone here with Pierce made her pulse quicken for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. I know it is not ideal, Pierce said, misreading her expression. But it is the safest option. Once Malone is behind bars, you can go back to your life. Except she did not have much of a life to go back to, Olivia thought. No job, no home, no real place in Dodge City. Maybe this was a chance to start over somewhere new. Or maybe, a small voice whispered in the back of her mind, this was a chance for something entirely different. They settled in for the night, Pierce insisting Olivia take the cot while he made a bedroll on the floor. She tried to argue, but he was immovable on the subject. I have slept in worse places, he said. You need proper rest. No arguments. Olivia lay on the narrow cot, listening to Pierce's steady breathing in the darkness. She should have felt awkward or uncomfortable, but instead she felt safer than she had in months. There was something solid and dependable about Pierce Owens, something that made her want to trust him completely. It was a dangerous feeling, she knew. She had only known him for a day, but sometimes a day was all it took to recognize something real. The next morning dawned clear and hot. Pierce cooked breakfast over the stove, frying bacon and making coffee that was only slightly less bitter than the night before. They ate together in companionable silence. Then Pierce announced he was going to scout the surrounding area, make sure no one had followed them. Will you be all right here for a couple hours? He asked. Yes, Olivia said with more confidence than she had felt the night before. I will keep watch. After Pierce left, Olivia busied herself with tidying the shack and taking inventory of their supplies. She found a battered book on a shelf, a collection of poetry, and settled down to read. The words washed over her, beautiful and haunting, and for a little while she could almost forget the danger that lurked beyond these walls. Pierce returned around midday, looking satisfied. No sign of anyone, he reported. We should be safe here for now. The day stretched out before them, long and slow. They talked, sharing stories of their childhoods, their hopes, their fears. Olivia learned that Pierce wanted to eventually settle down, maybe buy a small ranch somewhere quiet. Pierce learned that Olivia had always dreamed of opening a library, a place where people could come and lose themselves in stories the way she had as a child. You love reading, Pierce observed, watching her fingers trace the cover of the poetry book. I love stories, Olivia corrected. The way they can transport you somewhere else, make you feel things you never expected, she smiled. When my parents died, books were what saved me. They gave me hope that life could be more than just grief. What is your favorite story? Pierce asked. Olivia thought for a moment. Jane Eyre, she said finally. I loved how Jane was strong and independent, how she refused to compromise herself even when it would have been easier. She knew what she deserved, and she waited for it. Sounds like someone I know, Pierce said quietly, and when Olivia looked up, she found him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. The moment stretched between them, charged with something unnamed. Then Pierce cleared his throat and stood, breaking the spell. I should check on the horse, he said, and disappeared outside. Olivia sat alone, her heart racing. What was happening here? She barely knew this man, and yet she found herself thinking about him constantly, noticing the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the way his hands moved with such sureness and skill. It was ridiculous. It was foolish. It was also undeniable. That evening, as they shared another simple meal, Pierce asked about the items in her tin box. "What made those things so important that you risked your life to bury them?" he asked. Olivia opened the box and carefully lifted out each item, explaining their significance. Pierce listened intently, his eyes following her hands as she handled each precious object. "This pocket watch," he said, picking it up carefully when she offered it. "Your father sounds like he was a good man." "He was," Olivia said softly. "He always said that time was our most valuable possession, because once it is gone, we can never get it back. He taught me to spend it on things that matter." "Wise advice," Pierce said, handing the watch back. Their fingers brushed in the exchange, and electricity shot up Olivia's arm. "What about you?" she asked, trying to ignore the way her pulse had quickened. "What do you value most?" Pierce was quiet for a long moment. "Honestly, I have spent so long focused on hunting down bad men that I am not sure anymore. My badge, I suppose, my word. The idea that justice still means something in this world. Those are good things to value," Olivia said. "Maybe," Pierce said. "But lately I have been wondering if maybe I have been missing something, focusing so much on justice that I forgot about living." Their eyes met across the small table, and Olivia felt that pull again, stronger this time. She had the sudden, wild urge to reach out and touch his face to trace the strong line of his jaw. Instead, she stood abruptly, needing distance. "I think I will get some air," she said, and fled outside before Pierce could respond. The night was clear and cool, a relief from the day's heat. Stars blazed overhead, more than Olivia had ever seen in the city. She walked a little way from the shack, trying to settle her racing thoughts. This was not the time to develop feelings for Pierce Owens. She was a witness in hiding. He was a lawman doing his job. Once this was over, they would go their separate ways and likely never see each other again. The thought made her chest ache. Olivia. She turned to find Pierce standing a few feet away, his hat in his hands. "I am sorry if I said something wrong," he said. "You did not," Olivia assured him. "I just needed a moment." Pierce moved closer, and in the starlight his face was all planes and shadows. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you feel it too?" The question was quiet, almost hesitant. "This thing between us." Olivia's heart stopped. She could lie, could pretend she did not know what he meant, but she was tired of running, tired of denying what she felt. "Yes," she whispered. Pierce closed the distance between them, and suddenly he was right there, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "I know the timing is terrible," he said. "I know we have only just met. But Olivia, I cannot stop thinking about you. From the moment I saw you in that garden, so brave and determined even though you were terrified, I felt something shift inside me." "Pierce," Olivia breathed, and then his hands were cupping her face and he was kissing her. The world fell away. There was only Pierce, his lips on hers, gentle at first and then more insistent. Olivia's hands found his shoulders, gripping tight, anchoring herself to this moment. She had been kissed before, chased pecks from boys back home, but this was different. This was fire and hunger and something deeper, something that felt like coming home. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Pierce rested his forehead against hers. "I should not have done that," he said, though he made no move to step away. "Why not?" Olivia asked. "Because you are under my protection, because you are vulnerable and scared, because I do not want you to think I expect anything from you." Olivia pulled back enough to look him in the eye. "Pierce Owens, I am a grown woman who knows her own mind. I am scared, yes, but I am not so vulnerable that I do not know what I want. And right now, what I want is you." Pierce's eyes darkened, and he kissed her again, deeper this time. When they finally made their way back to the shack, hands intertwined, Olivia felt as though she was floating. They sat together on the cot, talking late into the night. Pierce told her about the places he had been, the things he had seen. Olivia shared her dreams for the future, dreams that had seemed impossible just days ago but now felt within reach. They kissed again and again, learning each other, taking comfort in the connection that had formed so quickly between them. "Stay with me tonight," Olivia whispered eventually. "I do not want to be alone." Pierce hesitated, clearly torn between desire and propriety. "Olivia, I will not compromise you." "You are not compromising me," Olivia said firmly. "I am asking you. I am choosing this." Still, Pierce was careful, respectful. They lay together on the narrow cot, fully clothed, wrapped in each other's arms. Olivia pressed her face against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, and felt peace settle over her like a blanket. "I will keep you safe," Pierce murmured into her hair. "I promise." "I know," Olivia said, and she meant it. The next 3 days passed in a strange, suspended bubble. During the daylight hours, they maintained a careful distance, keeping watch for any sign of danger. But at night, they came together, talking and kissing and learning the contours of each other's hearts. Pierce told her about the nightmares that still haunted him, memories of finding his father's body. Olivia shared the guilt she carried, wondering if she could have done more to save her parents. They traded fears and hopes, building something real and solid between them. On the 4th morning, Pierce rode to town to check for a response to his telegram. He returned looking grim. "The marshal is not coming," he said, pacing the small shack like a caged animal. "Some kind of territorial dispute up north. All available men are tied up with that. So what do we do?" Olivia asked, though she already suspected the answer. "We cannot stay here forever," Pierce said. "Our supplies will not last much longer, and eventually Malone will give up searching in town and start expanding his net. We need to deal with this ourselves." "How?" Olivia asked. "There are 6 of them and 1 of you. 7 if you count Sheriff Collins, though I am not counting on him for much." Pierce stopped pacing and looked at her. "I have an idea, but it is dangerous." "Tell me." Pierce outlined his plan. They would return to Dodge City, but publicly, making sure Malone knew Olivia was back. Then they would set a trap, using Olivia as bait to lure Malone and his men into a situation where Pierce could arrest them. It would be risky, but if it worked, they could end this once and for all. "Absolutely not," Olivia said immediately. "That is too dangerous. If something goes wrong, we are no worse off than we are now," Pierce interrupted. "Olivia, we cannot keep running. Eventually they will find us, and when they do, we might not have the advantage. At least this way, we control the situation." Olivia wanted to argue, but she could see the logic in his plan. And more than that, she trusted him. Over the past few days, Pierce had proven himself to be capable, thoughtful, and utterly dedicated to her safety. If he said this was their best option, she believed him. "All right," she said finally. "What do you need me to do?" They spent the rest of the day preparing. Pierce cleaned and loaded his weapons, checked his ammunition, went over the plan again and again until Olivia could recite it in her sleep. They would ride into town tomorrow morning, making no effort to hide. Olivia would go to the general store where she used to work, acting as though she was simply returning to her normal life. Malone would hear about it within the hour. He would come for her, and when he did, Pierce would be waiting. That night, lying in Pierce's arms, Olivia could not sleep. Fear curled in her stomach, cold and heavy. What if something went wrong? What if Pierce got hurt? What if she lost him just as she had found him? "Hey," Pierce said softly, sensing her distress. "Talk to me." I am scared, Olivia admitted. Not for myself, but for you. Pierce, if anything happened to you because of me, nothing is going to happen to me, Pierce said firmly. I have been doing this for years, Olivia. I know how to handle men like Malone. Promise me, Olivia said, propping herself up to look at him in the darkness. Promise me you will be careful. Pierce reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. I promise. And I need you to promise me something too, anything. Promise me that no matter what happens tomorrow, you will trust me. Even if things do not go according to plan, even if you get scared, trust that I know what I am doing and that I will keep you safe. I promise, Olivia whispered and sealed it with a kiss. They made love that night, slow and tender in the darkness of the shack. It was Olivia's first time, and Pierce was patient and careful, making sure she felt nothing but pleasure and safety. Afterward, wrapped in his arms, Olivia felt a certainty settle over her. Whatever happened tomorrow, whatever the future held, she loved this man. It had happened fast, faster than she ever imagined possible, but that did not make it any less real. I love you, she whispered into the darkness. Pierce's arms tightened around her. I love you too, he said. More than I thought possible. They left the line shack at dawn, riding double on Pierce's horse. The morning was already hot, promising another scorching day. As Dodge City came into view on the horizon, Olivia felt her stomach clench with nervousness. Pierce must have felt her tension because he squeezed her waist reassuringly. Remember the plan, he said quietly. You go to the general store. Act normal, like you have nothing to hide. I will be nearby watching. When Malone shows up, you just need to keep him talking until I get into position. And if he tries to shoot me on sight? Olivia asked, only half joking. He would not do that in broad daylight with witnesses around, Pierce said. He wants to know if you told anyone else what you saw, if there are any other loose ends he needs to tie up. He will try to talk to you first. They rode into town on Front Street, making no effort at concealment. People stared as they passed, recognizing Olivia. She kept her head high, refusing to show fear. Pierce helped her down in front of the general store, his hands lingering on her waist for a moment. Be brave, he murmured. I will be right here. Olivia nodded and walked into the store, the little bell above the door jangling cheerfully. Mr. Henderson, the owner, looked up from behind the counter and his eyes widened in shock. Miss Turner, we all thought you had left town or worse. I am fine, Mr. Henderson, Olivia said, proud that her voice remained steady. I just needed a few days away after the excitement, but I am back now, and I was hoping I might still have my position here. Mr. Henderson looked uncomfortable. Well now, Miss Turner, I am not sure that is wise. There are men looking for you, dangerous men. I do not want that kind of trouble in my store. Before Olivia could respond, the door opened behind her. She did not need to turn around to know who it was. She could feel the menace radiating from him. Miss Turner, Dutch Malone said, his voice like gravel. What a pleasant surprise. I have been wanting to talk to you. Olivia turned slowly. Dutch stood in the doorway, blocking the exit, his hand resting casually on the gun at his hip. Two of his men flanked him, equally armed and dangerous looking. I have nothing to say to you, Mr. Malone, Olivia said, forcing strength into her voice. Now, do not be like that, Dutch said, taking a step closer. We just need to have a little conversation, clear up some misunderstandings. Maybe you thought you saw something the other night at the bank, but you were mistaken. Is that not right? I know what I saw, Olivia said, and I have already told the sheriff. Dutch's smile turned ugly. That old fool. He could not find his own backside with both hands and a map. No, Miss Turner, I think you and I need to talk somewhere more private. Settle this matter properly. The lady does not want to go anywhere with you, Malone. Pierce's voice came from the back of the store, where he had been hidden behind a shelf. He stepped into view now, his rifle aimed steady at Dutch's chest. Dutch's eyes narrowed. "Deputy Owens, should have known you would stick your nose into this. This is none of your concern. A witness to a federal crime being threatened. That is exactly my concern," Pierce said calmly. "Now, I am going to give you one chance to surrender peacefully. You and your men drop your weapons and come along quietly to the jail." For a moment, Olivia thought it might actually work. Then Dutch laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "You think I am scared of one deputy? Boys, take him." Everything happened at once. Dutch's men went for their guns, Pierce fired, and Olivia dove behind the counter as bullets started flying. The store erupted in chaos, glass shattering, wood splintering. Olivia covered her head, praying that Pierce was all right. The gunfire seemed to last forever, but was probably only seconds. When it finally stopped, Olivia cautiously lifted her head. One of Dutch's men lay motionless on the floor. The other was wounded, clutching his shoulder and moaning. Dutch himself had taken cover near the door, his gun drawn. Pierce had moved, taking position behind a heavy oak display case. His rifle was trained on Dutch, but the outlaw had the better cover. "Give it up, Malone," Pierce called. "Your men are down. Reinforcements are on their way. You have nowhere to go." This was a lie. There were no reinforcements, but Dutch did not know that. His eyes darted around the store, calculating his options. Then his gaze landed on Olivia, still crouched behind the counter, and his face twisted with rage. "This is all your fault," he snarled at her. "You should have minded your own business, girl." He raised his gun, aiming at Olivia, and time seemed to slow down. Olivia saw his finger tighten on the trigger, saw Pierce move, shouting something. Then Pierce was there, throwing himself in front of her just as Dutch fired. The bullet caught Pierce in the shoulder, spinning him around. He went down hard, his rifle clattering from his hands. Olivia screamed, lunging for him even as Dutch advanced, ready to finish them both off. But Pierce was not done. Even wounded, he drew his revolver with his left hand and fired 3 times in quick succession. Dutch jerked with each impact and then crumpled to the floor, his gun falling from lifeless fingers. For a moment, there was utter silence. Then the store filled with people, attracted by the gunfire. Sheriff Collins pushed his way through the crowd, looking pale and shaken. He took in the scene, 3 outlaws down, Pierce bleeding on the floor, Olivia crying over him. "Someone get the doctor," the sheriff shouted, finally galvanized into action. "Move." Olivia pressed her hands against Pierce's shoulder, trying to staunch the bleeding. His face was pale, but his eyes were open, focused on her. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice tight with pain. "No, you idiot," Olivia sobbed. "You got shot protecting me. Why did you do that?" "Because I love you," Pierce said simply. "Could not let him hurt you." The doctor arrived, a gruff older man who immediately took charge. He examined Pierce's wound with practiced efficiency, then ordered several men to carry Pierce to his office down the street. Olivia refused to leave his side, holding his hand as they navigated the crowded boardwalk. In the doctor's office, which smelled of carbolic and blood, Pierce was laid on a table. The doctor cut away his shirt, revealing the bullet wound high on his right shoulder. He probed the injury, making Pierce grunt with pain. "Bullet went clean through," the doctor announced. "Missed the bone and major blood vessels. You are lucky, deputy. This could have been a lot worse." "Does not feel lucky," Pierce muttered, then gasped as the doctor began cleaning the wound. Olivia held his left hand, letting him squeeze as hard as he needed to. She watched as the doctor worked, stitching the entry and exit wounds with neat, precise stitches. Finally, the doctor bandaged the shoulder and stepped back. "He will need to rest for at least a week," the doctor said to Olivia. "No strenuous activity. The wound needs time to heal properly, or it could reopen or get infected. Can you see to it that he follows orders?" "Yes," Olivia said firmly. "I will make sure he behaves." Pierce managed a weak smile. "I am right here, you know. And you are going to do exactly what the doctor says," Olivia told him. "No arguments." Over the next few days, the full story of what had happened came out. The 3 men who had died in the general store were Dutch Malone and 2 of his gang. The wounded man confessed to the bank robbery and implicated the other 3 gang members, who were quickly arrested. The stolen money was recovered from their hideout. Dodge City was safe again, and Olivia Turner was hailed as a hero. But Olivia did not care about any of that. Her only concern was Pierce, who was staying in a room above the doctor's office while he recovered. She spent every day at his bedside, reading to him, talking with him, helping him eat when his shoulder made it difficult. The boarding house had offered her old room back, but she found excuses to stay with Pierce as much as possible. On the 5th day after the shooting, as Olivia sat by the window reading, Pierce spoke up from the bed. "Marry me." Olivia nearly dropped her book. She turned to stare at him, certain she had misheard. "What? Marry me?" Pierce repeated, pushing himself up to sitting with his good arm. His face was serious, his eyes intense. "I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other for 2 weeks. But Olivia, I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, so marry me." Olivia's heart was racing so fast she thought it might burst from her chest. "Pierce, are you sure? This is not just because you got shot protecting me. This is because I cannot imagine my future without you in it," Pierce said. "The shooting just made me realize I should not waste any more time. Life is short, and I want to spend every moment I have left with you." Tears filled Olivia's eyes, but this time they were happy tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." Pierce grinned, the first real smile she had seen since he was wounded, and pulled her close with his good arm. They kissed, gentle and sweet, full of promise. They were married 2 weeks later, once Pierce was healed enough to stand through a ceremony. It was a simple affair, held in the small church at the edge of town. Mr. Henderson gave Olivia away, and several townspeople attended, people who had come to respect the brave young woman who had stood up to Dutch Malone. The doctor served as Pierce's best man, grumbling good-naturedly about foolish young people rushing into things, but clearly pleased nonetheless. Olivia wore a dress that the ladies of the town had sewn for her, white cotton with delicate embroidery. She carried wildflowers that Pierce had insisted on picking himself, despite his still healing shoulder. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and Pierce kissed her in front of God and everyone, Olivia felt joy so intense it was almost painful. That night, in the hotel room that served as their temporary home, Pierce gave Olivia a gift. It was a small wooden box beautifully carved with flowers and vines. "For your precious things," he said. "So you do not have to bury them in the ground anymore, although I will always help you dig them up if you need me to." Olivia laughed through tears and kissed him. "I love it. I love you." They made love that night as husband and wife, gentle because of Pierce's shoulder but no less passionate for the care they took with each other. Afterward, lying tangled together in the sheets, they talked about their future. "I have been thinking," Pierce said, running his fingers through Olivia's hair. "Maybe it is time I gave up this deputy badge, find something more stable, less dangerous." "You do not have to do that for me," Olivia said, though her heart leaped at the suggestion. The thought of Pierce constantly in danger had been a quiet terror in the back of her mind. "I am not doing it just for you," Pierce said. "I am doing it for us. I want to build a life, Olivia. A real life with a home and maybe a family someday." I have spent years chasing outlaws, trying to make up for what happened to my parents. But I realize now that the best way to honor them is to build something good, something lasting. That is what they would have wanted for me." "What would you do instead?" Olivia asked. "There is a ranch for sale about 10 miles east of here," Pierce said. "Small operation, but it has good land and water. I have some money saved up. We could buy it, build it into something. I grew up ranching before everything went wrong. I think I would like to get back to that." "I think that sounds perfect," Olivia said softly. "And you could have your library," Pierce added. "Maybe not right away, but eventually. We could build it on the ranch property, make it available to neighboring families, give people access to books and learning." Olivia's eyes filled with tears again. "You remembered." "I remember everything you have ever told me," Pierce said, cupping her face. "Your dreams are my dreams now, Olivia. We are in this together." They purchased the ranch a month later, using the reward money that had been offered for the capture of Dutch Malone's gang. The place needed work, but it was theirs, a home of their own. They spent the next months fixing it up, repairing fences, mending the barn, making the small ranch house livable. Pierce proved to be an excellent rancher, his knowledge and skills returning quickly. He purchased a small herd of cattle and several horses, building the operation slowly and carefully. Olivia threw herself into making their house a home, sewing curtains, planting a garden, learning to cook over the wood stove. They also retrieved Olivia's tin box from where it had been stored safely at the doctor's office. She placed it in the carved wooden box Pierce had given her, then set it on a shelf in their bedroom. Sometimes she would take out the items and remember her parents, remember the journey that had brought her here. But the memories were no longer painful. They were precious, yes, but no longer tinged with the sharp edge of grief. She had built a new life, a better life, and she knew her parents would be proud. As autumn gave way to winter, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. She told Pierce on a cold December evening as they sat by the fire, his arms around her. For a moment he just stared at her, processing the news. Then his face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen. "A baby," he breathed. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Olivia asked, though she could see the answer in his eyes. "Happy, Olivia, I am beyond happy. I am blessed. You have given me everything I never knew I wanted." He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "A family of my own, a chance to be the father my dad was to me. This is more than I ever dreamed possible." Their son was born in June 1879, a healthy baby boy with his father's strong features and his mother's dark hair. They named him Peter, after Pierce's father. Pierce held his son with such tenderness and awe that it made Olivia cry. She watched her husband become a father, saw the fierce protectiveness and deep love in his eyes, and fell in love with him all over again. The years that followed were good ones. The ranch prospered slowly but steadily. They added to their herd, improved their land, built a reputation for quality cattle. Peter grew from baby to toddler to young boy, bright and curious and full of energy. He loved helping his father with the animals and following his mother around the house, always asking questions. When Peter was 3, Olivia gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Iris after Olivia's mother. She had her mother's delicate features and her father's warm eyes. Pierce doted on his little girl, carrying her around on his shoulders and making up stories to tell her at bedtime. True to his word, Pierce helped Olivia build her library. It started as a single-room addition to their house, lined with shelves that Pierce built with his own hands. Olivia filled those shelves with books she ordered from back east, using profits from the ranch. Word spread, and soon neighboring families were coming to borrow books, to sit in the cozy room and read, to let their children discover the magic of stories. It was exactly what Olivia had dreamed of, but better, because it was real and it was hers. Sometimes she would stand in the doorway of the library room and just look at all those books, all that potential and knowledge and wonder, and feel overwhelmed with gratitude for how her life had turned out. One evening, 10 years after the day Pierce had helped her dig up her tin box, they sat together on the porch of their ranch house, watching their children play in the yard. Peter, now 9, was teaching 6-year-old Iris how to rope a fence post. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the air was warm with the promise of summer. "Do you ever think about that day?" Olivia asked, leaning against Pierce's shoulder. "The day we met, all the time," Pierce admitted. "I think about how scared you were, how brave you were, how you had buried everything precious to you in the ground to keep it safe." He paused, then smiled. "I am glad I got to help you dig it all back up again." "You did more than that," Olivia said softly. "You helped me build a whole new life. You gave me a home, a family, a future. You gave me everything." "We gave each other everything," Pierce corrected, pulling her close and pressing a kiss to her temple. "That day I saw you in that garden, I thought I was just doing my job, protecting a witness. I had no idea I was meeting my wife, the love of my life, the mother of my children. Funny how life works out sometimes." "Do you ever regret giving up being a deputy?" Olivia asked. It was a question she had asked before, but she always wanted to be sure. "Not for a single second," Pierce said firmly. "This life right here, this is what matters. You, our kids, our home. I spent so many years focused on justice and revenge, and it nearly consumed me. You saved me from that, Olivia. You showed me that there was more to life than anger and duty. You taught me how to live again." Olivia turned in his arms and kissed him, still feeling that same spark that had ignited between them a decade ago. Some things never changed, never faded. The love between them was one of those things, constant and true. "I love you, Pierce Owens," she said. "I love you too, Olivia Owens," he replied. "Always have, always will." They sat together as the sun sank lower, their children's laughter floating on the evening breeze. Olivia thought about the tin box upstairs, about the items it contained. Those things were still precious, still important, but they were no longer all she had. Now she had so much more. A husband who loved her, children who filled her days with joy, a home that was truly hers, a purpose that fulfilled her. She had buried her past to keep it safe, and Pierce had helped her dig it up again. But in doing so, they had planted something new. A future together, roots that went deep, a love that would last through all the seasons to come. That night, after the children were in bed and the house was quiet, Pierce and Olivia lay together in their room, the carved wooden box visible on its shelf in the lamplight. "Tell me a story," Pierce said sleepily, the way he often did. He loved listening to her voice, to the tales she would spin from imagination or memory. So Olivia told him a story. It was about a young woman who lost everything and had to bury her treasures to keep them safe. It was about a brave cowboy who helped her dig them up again. It was about danger and courage, and a love that grew fast and true. It was about building a life together against all odds, about finding home in another person's arms. It was, in other words, their story. And it had the best possible ending. They lived happily ever after together for all the rest of their days. The ranch continued to grow over the years. Peter grew into a fine young man who loved the land as much as his father did, taking on more and more responsibility as Pierce's hair began to gray. Iris became a passionate reader like her mother, spending hours in the library and eventually helping Olivia run it, cataloging books and helping younger children discover the joy of reading. Pierce and Olivia added 2 more children to their family over the years, another son named Thomas, and finally another daughter named Sarah. The house that had once seemed too big for just 2 people now rang with life and laughter, full to the brim with love. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Pierce took Olivia back to Dodge City. The town had changed over the years, growing more civilized, more settled. The old boarding house where Olivia had once lived was gone, replaced by a hotel. The general store where the shootout had happened still stood, though Mr. Henderson had retired and his son now ran it. They walked to the place where the boarding house garden had been, now occupied by a different building. But Pierce had measured carefully before they left, and he led Olivia to the exact spot where she had buried her tin box all those years ago. "This is where it all started," he said, taking her hand. "Right here, you were brave enough to fight for what mattered. You buried your treasures and then you trusted me enough to help you reclaim them." "Best decision I ever made," Olivia said, squeezing his hand. They stood there together for a long moment, remembering. Then Pierce pulled something from his pocket, a small leather pouch. He knelt and began to dig, just as he had done 2 decades ago, and buried the pouch in the earth. "What is that?" Olivia asked, curious. "Letters from our children," Pierce said, standing and brushing off his hands. "I asked each of them to write something about our family, about what home means to them. I thought maybe someday, years from now, someone else might dig this up. They will find these letters and know that this spot, this exact place, was where 2 people found each other and built something beautiful. It is our own little time capsule." Tears streamed down Olivia's face as she threw her arms around her husband. After all these years, he could still surprise her, still find new ways to show his love. They returned to the ranch as the sun began to set, arriving home to find all their children gathered for a surprise anniversary dinner. The table was laden with food, the house decorated with wildflowers. Peter stood to make a toast, his voice strong and sure. "To our parents," he said, raising his glass. "Who taught us what real love looks like. Who showed us that family is not just about blood, but about the people who help you dig up your treasures and build something lasting. To Ma and Pa, happy anniversary." "Happy anniversary," everyone echoed, and the evening dissolved into celebration and joy. Late that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Pierce and Olivia sat together in the library room she had built, surrounded by hundreds of books. The lamp burned low, casting shadows on the walls. Pierce held the carved wooden box in his lap, the box he had given her on their wedding night. "Open it," Olivia said softly. Pierce opened the box and carefully removed each item, the pearls, worn now only on special occasions but still beautiful. The locket with her parents' photograph, now sitting beside a newer locket that contained pictures of their own children. The deed to her family's farm in Missouri, never claimed but kept as a reminder of where she came from. Her father's pocket watch, which Pierce had learned to maintain over the years, keeping it running perfectly. And finally, the $300 she had saved so carefully, now just a curiosity since they had built their wealth together. "These things used to be all I had," Olivia said, touching each item gently. "They were so precious because they were all that connected me to my past, to who I used to be." "And now?" Pierce asked. "Now they are just part of a much bigger story," Olivia said. "They are still precious, but not because they are all I have. They are precious because they remind me of how far I have come, of everything I survived to get here. They are the beginning of our story, Pierce. The treasures I buried that you helped me dig up. But everything that came after, all the years and children and joy and struggle, that is the real treasure." Pierce set the box aside and pulled Olivia into his arms. "I could not have said it better myself," he murmured against her hair. "You are my treasure, Olivia. You and our family. Everything else is just details." They sat together in comfortable silence, two people who had started as strangers and become soulmates. The house around them was quiet, filled with the gentle breathing of sleeping children, with memories of laughter and tears, with love built strong through years of partnership. Outside, the Kansas prairie stretched endlessly under a sky full of stars. Somewhere in Dodge City, buried under earth and time, a small leather pouch held letters from their children, a testament to the family that had grown from the chance meeting of a terrified young woman and a duty-bound cowboy. The story of how she hid her things in the ground to keep them safe, and the cowboy helped her dig them up again, had become the foundation of a legacy that would extend far beyond their own lifetimes. Their children would tell their children, and they would tell theirs, about the day their grandmother buried her treasures and trusted a stranger to help her reclaim them. About how that trust had blossomed into love, and that love had built a family, and that family had created a home where everyone was welcome. As Olivia and Pierce finally made their way to bed that night, hand in hand as always, they passed by each of their children's rooms. Peter, studying ranch management books even in sleep. Thomas, his carved wooden horses lined up carefully on his dresser. Iris, with a book still open on her bed where she had fallen asleep reading. Sarah, the youngest, clutching a rag doll her father had made for her. This was their treasure now. This was what they had built together. And it was more precious than anything that could be buried in the ground, because it was alive and growing and full of infinite possibility. Years continued to pass, as they always do. Pierce's hair went from gray to white, and Olivia's hands developed the gentle tremor of age. But their love never wavered, never diminished. If anything, it grew stronger, tempered by time and trials into something unbreakable. They saw their children marry and have children of their own. Peter took over running the ranch completely, managing it with the same care and dedication his father had shown. Iris married a schoolteacher from Dodge City, and together they expanded the library into a full schoolhouse, providing education to all the families in the area. Thomas became a horse trainer, known throughout Kansas for his gentle touch and expert knowledge. Sarah, their youngest, surprised everyone by becoming a doctor, one of the first female physicians in the state. Pierce and Olivia became grandparents, then great-grandparents. Their house was always full of visiting family, of children running and playing in the same yard where their own kids had grown up. The carved wooden box remained on its shelf, now a family heirloom that their grandchildren would ask about, listening with wide eyes to the story of how grandmother had buried her treasures and grandfather had helped her dig them up, and how that had been the beginning of everything. On a warm June evening in 1905, Olivia and Pierce sat together on their porch for what would be the last time. They were both in their 70s now, their bodies worn but their spirits undiminished. The sunset was particularly beautiful that evening, painting the sky in brilliant shades of purple and gold. "You remember what I told you that first night in the line shack?" Pierce asked, his voice quieter than it used to be but still strong. "About my father's advice." "He said that time was our most valuable possession," Olivia said, remembering, "because once it is gone we can never get it back." "He was right," Pierce said. "And I am grateful for every moment I have spent with you, Olivia, every single second. If I could go back and do it all again, I would not change a thing. Not even the part where you got shot." Olivia teased gently. Pierce chuckled. "Not even that. It was worth it, all of it, to have this life with you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink lower. Olivia rested her head on Pierce's shoulder, just as she had done countless times over the decades. She thought about that scared young woman she had been, burying her treasures in a desperate attempt to save something from the chaos. She thought about the brave cowboy who had appeared like an answer to a prayer, who had helped her dig up those treasures and then given her so much more. She thought about all the years in between, the struggles and joys, the children raised and the dreams realized. Every moment had led to this, to sitting here with the man she loved, watching the sun set on a life well lived. "I love you, Pierce Owens," she whispered. "I love you too, Olivia Owens," he replied. "From that first moment in the garden until my last breath. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." Pierce passed peacefully in his sleep 3 days later, Olivia holding his hand. She grieved deeply, as anyone would after losing their other half, but there was comfort in knowing they had made the most of every moment together. They had spent nearly 5 decades as husband and wife, building something beautiful and lasting. Olivia lived another 2 years, cared for lovingly by her children and grandchildren. She spent those years recording the family history, writing down every story she could remember for future generations. She wanted them to know where they came from, to understand the love and sacrifice that had built their family. When Olivia finally passed, also peacefully and surrounded by her loved ones, she was buried next to Pierce on a small hill overlooking their ranch. The headstone was simple but beautiful, bearing both their names and a single inscription. She buried her treasures, he helped her dig them up, and together they built a legacy of love. Their children opened the carved wooden box one last time after Olivia's funeral, examining the precious items inside with reverent hands. The pearls, the locket, the deed, the pocket watch, the money, all still there, carefully preserved. But they also found something new. A letter, in Olivia's careful handwriting, addressed to her descendants. Peter, as the eldest, read it aloud to the gathered family. "To my dear children, grandchildren, and all who come after, the items in this box once represented everything I had in the world. They were buried in fear and dug up in hope, the first link in a chain that would become our family. But the real treasure was never these objects. The real treasure was your grandfather, a man who saw a frightened young woman and chose to help her, to protect her, to love her. The real treasure was the family we built together, each of you a precious link in that chain. The real treasure was the life we lived, full of ordinary moments that became extraordinary through the simple act of living them together. I want you to remember that treasures come in many forms. Sometimes they are pearls and lockets and pocket watches. But more often, they are the people we love, the homes we build, the kindness we show to strangers who might become family. Never be afraid to bury your treasures when times are hard, to protect what matters most. But also never be afraid to trust someone to help you dig them back up again. Your grandfather taught me that trust, that bravery, that willingness to let someone in. That is where real love begins. Live well, love deeply, and remember that you carry the strength of 2 people who lost everything and built it all back again. You come from survivors, from lovers, from builders. That is your inheritance, more valuable than anything that could be placed in a box. All my love, forever and always, your mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. Olivia Turner Owens. There was not a dry eye in the room when Peter finished reading. They carefully returned the items to the carved wooden box, now understanding that they were not just objects, but symbols of something much greater. The box was passed down through the generations, always treasured, always remembered, a physical reminder of where the family had come from and the love that had created them. The ranch remained in the family, passed from generation to generation. The library expanded and evolved. eventually becoming a cornerstone of the community that grew up around it. The story of Pierce and Olivia became family legend, told and retold, embellished perhaps, but always true in the ways that mattered. And somewhere in Dodge City, buried beneath decades of growth and change, a small leather pouch remained hidden, waiting. Maybe someday someone would dig it up and read the letters from children writing about their parents' love, about the day their mother buried her treasures and their father helped her dig them up, about the beginning of everything. Maybe those words would inspire someone else to take a chance on trust, on love, on building something lasting. But whether that happened or not, the legacy of Pierce and Olivia Owens lived on in their descendants, in the values they passed down, in the love they had modeled. They had shown that real treasure is not what you can hold in your hands, but what you carry in your heart. They had proven that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is accept help, trust a stranger, take a chance on love. They had lived a good life, a full life, a life that mattered. And in the end, that is the greatest treasure of all. The story began with a frightened young woman burying everything she owned, trying desperately to save something from the chaos that threatened to consume her. It continued with a cowboy who saw someone in need and chose to help, not knowing that decision would change both their lives forever. And it ended, as all the best stories do, with love triumphant, with family strong and thriving, with a legacy that would echo down through the ages. She hid her things in the ground to keep them safe. The cowboy helped her dig them up again. And together, they built something that would last forever. A love story for the ages, set against the wild backdrop of the American West, a testament to the power of trust, courage, and the human heart's infinite capacity for love. Their story was complete, their journey finished, their love eternal. And somewhere on a Kansas prairie under an endless sky, two spirits rested side by side, their hands forever intertwined, their hearts forever joined, their story forever told. This was the happily ever after they had earned, fought for, built together. This was the end, and it was perfect.